Obviously, AI can code a lot faster than humans. You can just try things out. As used to kind of just look at the results and make sure that there's quality and good planning involved.
So, I think we will get started. The mic is live. Can't say anything spicy now. Good afternoon, everyone. Going to chat with you today about accelerators, a little bit of how we think about building one here in Las Vegas. As part of that, if you'll indulge me a little bit of autobiography, we'll go through my background. And I'll share a little bit with you about our kind of flagship program, the Innovation Launchpad, and how that reflects sort of what we think is true about accelerators broadly, and specifically what we think is what needs to be true about an accelerator that's going to be successful here in town. Okay. So the $55 billion question that I was just talking to a few folks about is, why is all this money coming into the city, primarily on the Strip, and yet we can only attract $99 million of outside capital in 2024? It's a big mismatch. Any theories? I will cold call happily. Yeah?
Oh,
No?
why? Because they think it's just hospitality casinos
Okay.
and not startups.
Okay.
We were just talking about how the focus of the economy is not diversified, and sometimes the talent pool is different than what things used to be.
Perception, talent. What do you got?
Maybe we don't have a big startup coming out of Vegas.
No flagship unicorns. Okay. Any other ideas?
Not as much of a university culture. Not as many universities. I mean, like
Just the one. Yeah.
Boston has 100 universities in Boston.
Okay. All good guesses. I think all part of how we understand it as well. But it wasn't until I was kind of putting this together, I was like, wow, we can attract all this outside money. Clearly, we're a world-class destination. People have been coming here for decades. So why can't we get that outside money? A dollar's a dollar, right? And so that's sort of the framing for what we're going to talk about today. My background, I've been in hospitality my entire life. Even though I'm in venture now, I still call it hospitality. I grew up running around kitchens as a bratty kid. Then after grad school, I worked for Universal Studios Hollywood, still in mostly operational roles. Caesars Entertainment brought me out to Vegas about 8 years ago. That's where I started working on about $500 million of enterprise transformation, building relationships with partners like Dell, Intel, et cetera. In January of 2020, I had the good luck to sign for a job at MGM Resorts. I started April of 2020, just after all the casino doors have been wedged shut by 2x4s. But that was a really interesting experience, right? Because I think everyone had this realization for two things. One, that the resort that we came out of that pandemic with would have to look a little bit different. It would have to be more technologically fluent. It would have to be more connected, if for no other reason than health and safety. And I think, two, it was a really big wake-up call for a lot of stakeholders in the community to think seriously about what it would take to diversify this economy. I mean, I don't know how many of you caught this number during the pandemic, but I think our peak unemployment was like close to 30% across Nevada.
I was living here, and the ATM lines when the unemployment hit were like 100 deep, and the ATMs were running out of money.
Yeah. And so there was definitely an element, and there's been a conversation that I think has really benefited the startup ecosystem around how can we not let that happen again? What role do early stage technology companies have to play in actually getting us to that objective of a diverse economy that's more resilient? And then, sorry, I forgot to say, now I'm at Zero Labs since June of 2022. I'm one of the principals there. We're a very small team, but we are trying to build an accelerator for Vegas by Vegas. And I'll talk a lot more about what that looks like in a moment. So going back to that paradox, right? We are really, really, really good at cultivating, curating, developing a worldwide destination for people, for talent, for money. I mean, the one place you're going to find every Fortune 500 CEO at least once a year, most of them twice a year, is Vegas, right? We are really good at managing incredibly complex operations, right? A hotel casino might look like one building to the outside, but it's actually 9 to 20 different businesses, depending on how you want to count their tenants, running under one roof, providing a single experience to the guest. We're also really good at navigating enormously complex regulatory frameworks, right? It's like we can do hard things in this city. We've proven that for decades now. But like we were talking about earlier, we consistently struggle to attract breakout tech companies. These are the flagships that we were referencing. Very difficult to attract venture capital. Our angel ecosystem is growing quickly, but still feels kind of loosely connected to a lot of the activity that's taking place here. And all of that leads to a place where, you know, we don't have, I think, the ecosystem that we all believe we could have. We don't have the amount of capital that I think we all believe that we should have. And we're not getting to the outcomes for our founders that we all think that we should have. So, what is the actual problem, right? How many times have we heard this statement? All the time, right? It's constant. If you go to any GoEd event, you go to any Startup NV event, you go to any Startup Vegas event, and people ask like, oh, what's the #1 challenge in the Vegas startup ecosystem? There's not enough money running around. If I could just catch Mark Andreessen while he's at Whole Foods, I can get him to cut a check and that solves all of our problems, right? But in our view, that's actually completely backwards. The lack of funding in our minds is actually a symptom of our challenges, not the cause of our challenges. The way we think about it is that money is fungible, money is fluid, right? It crosses borders much faster than pretty much anything else. Click of a button. And so our view is if there's an opportunity for the money to be here, the money will find its way here, right? Investors love them, they're lazy, right? You put a good deal in front of them, you make it really obvious, they will write a check. That's their job, okay? So when we think about the real bottleneck, we sort of think about it as a funnel problem, right? People with the money, the corporate partners who normally foster these sorts of ecosystems, everyone in that value chain struggles to see, when they look at Las Vegas, they struggle to see a consistent quality of company. They struggle to see a consistency of the pace at which companies emerge and like the cadence at which they're going to see them so that they can plan their years around it. they struggle to see visibility, right? There's a lot of really good work that's taking place in the Valley right now, but unless you happen to bump into someone at an event like this, you might not ever hear about it, right? And that stifles collaboration, stifles investment, all these other things. And I think most importantly, even though it's the one that is maybe my hottest take, we have a really big legibility problem. And what do I mean by that? I mean that when people look at this ecosystem, it doesn't necessarily make sense to them, right? They don't know what Vegas is known for or what they should expect from Las Vegas, the way that if you go to Boston, you know that you're looking for healthcare. If you go to New York, you know that you're looking for finance or consumer retail, right? If you go to San Francisco, you're looking for everything. But if you go to LA, you're looking for media, okay? And so how do we tackle that? Sorry, skipped ahead. So you take that sort of funnel issue, and then you look at what we actually have here, and we have a fragmentation challenge as well, right? Everyone knows that the core of this city is the fun economy, as Bo at UNLV calls it. Hospitality, sports, gaming, entertainment. But we also have, not as well known to folks, enormous industries in transportation, logistics. Sometimes it feels like 80% of North Las Vegas is just one giant warehouse, right? We also have a lot of people doing really important critical work inside the university and outside the university on water and energy, right? Specifically with UNLV, there's some labs doing really interesting biotech pharmacy work, okay? But all of these things are very poorly connected. They don't cross-pollinate very well. The major stakeholders are often missing. Even inside kind of our top core cluster, right? Hospitality, sports, gaming, entertainment. Those companies really struggle to collaborate effectively. I was talking to two directors of operations from the A's a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me that they couldn't figure out, they couldn't get a hold of Caesars or MGM, right? So think about where the new stadium's gonna go. They've got MGM properties on every single corner, and they can't find someone to speak to, right? This should be an absolute no-brainer, and yet that's still a challenge for them. Okay, so if you magnify that out across the whole early stage startup ecosystem, when you're looking for pilot partnerships, when you're trying to figure out, okay, I've developed a piece of technology that has lots of different potential use cases, where can I bring it to market first? What relationships do I need to develop to actually be successful doing that? That's very, very difficult here. Probably a lot harder than it needs to be. And one of the challenges that we also have is that, what this all means is that a lot of the approaches that work in more mature ecosystems, places where you see Techstars, Plug and Play, a lot of these names that you might be familiar with, the approaches that work there often really struggle here. I know that Techstars and Plug and Play both. I know that conversations between them and various stakeholders in the city to bring a program to this town have been going on for at least 10 years, right? And they never get across the finish line. Because ultimately where it breaks down is they'll say, okay, we'll give you the decks, but you need to find the companies, you have to get the corporate partners on board, you have to find the investors, right? You have to do all of the things because they themselves don't have those relationships here. They don't have those assets here, right? That is combined with the fact that they don't understand specialized knowledge, like the specialized knowledge of our industries. The casino industry especially, which is the one I know best, incredibly insular. I was out here for about 2 years before I regularly spent time with people that didn't work for Caesars, right? And so we have all these challenges that we need to break down, and that led us to really thinking about, okay, what does a program for Vegas need to look like? And before I talk about what we're building specifically, I'll talk a little bit about how we think of what an accelerator is. I'm assuming everyone has like a vague idea in their head of what one is, so I don't have to start from like first principles. Okay. So my mental model for an accelerator is that it's a bridge between sort of the present and the future. One of the main people using that bridge is going to be startups, and that's sort of the frame that we'll use today, but it's also a bridge for corporate partners, it's also a bridge for policymakers, it's a bridge for all these stakeholders, especially here in Las Vegas. But when you think about, okay, what does that bridge consist of? Well, there's mentorship, right? There's a lot of knowledge transfer that needs to happen. Capital, very important one, even if it's not the root cause of all our ills. Community, which I think is often very underrated, and one of the things that I respect so much about Startup Vegas. Being a founder is a very lonely gig sometimes. Even your most supportive friends and family don't often understand what it is that you do. At least my mom certainly doesn't understand what I do. And then this idea of discovery, right? Helping you understand what's actually out there and helping people find you as a founder. That's one of the biggest services that we provide for folks. When we think about the different kind of types of accelerators, a sort of simple dichotomy or a simple 2x2 here would be to think about it as from very local to very global type programs, and then from very industry agnostic to very industry specific. So Y Combinator, obviously the OG accelerator program, still the gold standard by which all others are measured. They have one location in San Francisco, but the whole world comes to them, right? Techstars, plug and play. I was sort of squishy about how I classed these, but Techstars, if you have money and you have a corporate sponsor, they will stand up a program for you. And that's a really great model for them. They've got BMW programs, they've got Delta programs, they've got Boeing programs, et cetera, et cetera. Plug and play, very similar, but very much more focused on, instead of like a regional or a global industry, they will do kind of like a Charlotte or a New York or one of those regional things. Generator, a name that some of you might be familiar with as well, they would also be kind of in between this bucket, right? They're very globally distributed, but they tend to either go with an industry-specific focus or a very city-specific focus. And those models all work for different reasons. If you wanted to learn more about like how startups are paid for and like the business model of them, we can talk about that in Q&A, but I'll sort of glide over that now. Where we're really focused at Zero Labs is building the best possible local accelerator for Las Vegas's core industries. So I'm agnostic, but not to everything. I'm agnostic for the stuff that Vegas should be able to lead for the next 50 years, if that makes sense. And one of the insights that we've had that's helped us really build this program, and I think find the success that we have found so far, is realizing that we are not necessarily in the business of cutting checks or fostering community, blah, 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 blah. Like, we are in the business of sort of facilitating human experience, connection, and growth, right? That's the game. In the same way that hotels provide much more than a place to sleep, they're a place for you to stay while you're visiting friends, while you're doing business, while you're reconnecting with loved ones, or going on your divorce party. Accelerators provide a lot more than capital, right? They provide all those other things I was talking about and more. And so when we sat back in June of 2022 and really sort of started thinking through what did Vegas need based on our assessment of the ecosystem at the time, we knew that we wanted to try to build a program that could understand our unique assets and advantages as an ecosystem and leverage those, find a way to include the strip economy, because if we pretend that doesn't exist, then we're just kind of a crappy Phoenix suburb, right? Facilitate that cross-industry collaboration with whatever sectors that should be part of it. And most importantly, look for ideas and founders who have to be here, right? If you're building a foundational frontier AI model and you're talking to me, that's a really, really bad sign. Because you either don't know that you should be in San Francisco or you couldn't make it in San Francisco. And I don't think, when I acknowledge that Vegas is a secondary market for VC, that doesn't mean it's a lesser market or that it's a worse market. It just means that it's smaller right now, right? And so we're looking for world-beating companies that have to be built here. So, Zero Labs. How do we bring that by Vegas, for Vegas concept to life? In our mind, there's sort of three kind of elements that we connect to our founders to find, to build our programs. Top left, you've got the NSHE system, specifically UNLV. They're an R1 research university, 5,000 plus faculty. Lots of interesting resources in there that are potentially useful for startup founders. we're doing a lot of work helping them unlock those and make them usable by startup founders. On the bottom, you've got just broadly government. So when you look at the Governor's Office for Economic Development, a guy named Carson Heiss, very, very supportive of the startup ecosystem. The City of Las Vegas, Clark County, all very, very supportive of the ecosystem, and starting to think really deeply about what can they do as policymakers to make our lives easier, whether that's expedited permitting for autonomous vehicles, right? Whether it's creating an innovation district that has certain tax abatements if you're doing research and development here in Las Vegas, or in an accounting sense. These are all things where the government has a role to play besides just getting out of the way, right? And what we do, the third one is bringing all of our corporate partners to the table, right? So these are the obvious global ones like AWS, Microsoft, Mercury, et cetera. But it also includes local companies like Caesars Entertainment, MGM Resorts. We just announced our partnership with Every, which is a $1.5 billion market cap fintech company that's merging with a $1.1 billion market cap company next week, IGT. And what they are finally starting to understand is, historically, startups were not viewed as part of your innovation strategy as an established enterprise here in Las Vegas, speaking mostly for the Strip here. And so one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time with them on over the last couple of years is helping them understand that you have a choice that goes beyond just building everything in-house and taking whatever Microsoft or Infor wants to sell you, right? You can actually go into the community. We can help facilitate connections with startups. You can tell them the problems that you're working on, and then you can work with them to solve your specific problem the way that you need it to be solved in a way that's mutually beneficial for everyone. And so we take those three components and we sort of plug them into our program ecosystem and sort of surround our founders with that, right? And the way to sort of think about this is that it's like, it's kind of like Zero Labs is sort of the middleware layer for the startup ecosystem as we understand it, right? We provide APIs for all these different stakeholders to have productive transactions and interactions with one another in a way that's going to be mutually beneficial for all of them. So what we're trying to do with our thesis is, like I said earlier, find those founders for whom Vegas could be a cheat code, where take away the money, take away everything. If you can find a way to leverage a customer in Las Vegas, the location of Las Vegas, even the convention calendar of Las Vegas, is there an opportunity to use that to supercharge your business? Can we start condensing that deal flow in a way that allows us to package it and make it visible to other stakeholders in the ecosystem here in the Valley, around the state, and then around the world? Can we start to create a frequency of programming, something that Startup Vegas does really well? I always tell Heather, like, you guys are the pulse of the startup ecosystem here, right? You provide a regular cadence for people to come together. Not everyone's gonna be at every single thing, but they know that, okay, there's this thing there, and other people can build on it, around it, adjacent to it, and we all get stronger because of that. And then can we make all of those stories really legible, right? So people can understand, hey, I wanna come to town. You're saying, I wanna start getting more involved in the VC ecosystem. You're an angel in V. How can I start seeing more deals, right? Well, we want to make that process really easy so that you as an individual don't have to go out there and chase every single one of these opportunities down yourself, right? So let's talk about our flagship program, and then almost done we can have a discussion. When we got started, the format of what Zero Labs was gonna be was very much unsettled. At first, we wanted to be an early stage venture fund, and then all of our VC friends were like, there's no deals. So we said, okay, if we don't want to be a venture fund, then we need to make our own deals, because we're not afraid to work with founders like a lot of investors. So we said, let's do an accelerator. Well, those are big and expensive, and 3 months is a long time to figure out if anyone actually wants this thing. So we said, maybe it's a venture studio, if anyone's familiar with that concept. Then it's like, okay, well, even if you have the money, there's not enough talent to be building and scaling multiple companies at once, no matter how good you feel about the thesis behind those companies. So we said, okay, what's left? Well, what if we tried to cram a 3-month curriculum into a 3-day box for super early stage founders, loosely associated with the thesis that I've been describing to you, and sort of see who shows up, And so in just after Thanksgiving of 2023, we said we were going to try this thing out called the Innovation Launchpad. We had 60 days to build it, and we ran our first program January 26th of 2024. We had 70-something applications, and we had 19 teams and 21 founders. And what we try to do with the Launchpad is just very simple. I'm assuming everyone in the room is familiar with Mad Libs. A view of what it takes to be successful as an early stage founder is the degree to which you can complete this Mad Lib. Does your company have something that you can actually build that a real human being needs that they are willing to give you money for? That's the game. You can read all the books you want about it, watch all the podcasts, videos, whatever it is. If you can answer this, then you're probably going to be okay. And so our Launchpad is laser focused on trying to help people start to come to grips with this and understand, okay, for each one of these variables, what are the different levers that you have inside your business that you can build, that you can pull, that you can play with, that you can get from someone else, to try to combine in a specific way to solve this and start growing something really valuable. If you sort of skim through the schedule for our next program, you see it's a 3-day intensive. We start at 7 a.m. on day one. We're at the Blackfire building, which is the UNLV building in the Southwest Research Park over by IKEA. 7 a.m. to around 7:30 p.m. that first night. Day two, we come back in. We go from 7 a.m. again until around 10 o'clock because we have a big networking event where we bring in about 150 investors, current and former founders, operators, policymakers, folks from the university. And then the third day is entirely for what we call final presentations. The whole weekend you're working on a new pitch. You can use your old materials, but we want you to work on a new one because we think the format of a pitch presentation is very helpful for forcing you to organize and collect your thoughts and prioritize what you want to have and communicate to other people, right? And so you've been doing all this work iteratively from day one to day two, and on day three we put you in a room with about 40 to 45 people. The goal is for that to be the friendliest, unfriendly room you'll be in as a founder. People absolutely beat the crap out of your work, but you can leave that session with a high degree of confidence that, okay, I have a really good idea of what the next 6 months could look like. I have plans A, B, and C for how I'm going to start validating which one of those futures is possible and which one I want to bring to life. And I know that my understanding of the business and my own skill set has grown to the point that even if all those things fall apart, which they often do, I will be able to pivot much more intentionally and much more quickly into whatever the project needs to look like next. When you talk about the mix of our industries, right? I said I'm industry agnostic as long as it's something that's hyper relevant to Las Vegas. About 60% of our companies are from hospitality, sports, gaming, entertainment. About 40% of our companies are from those other buckets: transportation, logistics, aerospace. We're doing a big energy storage roadshow with the Canadian government here in a couple months. But in our mind, what this allows for is to do all those things I was talking about earlier. None of these industries, even the hospitality and gaming industry, maybe the gaming industry, but none of these industries could really sustain a dedicated launch pad by themselves. Not with the frequency and consistency that we want to host these things, right? So we have to create a platform that allows every single one of these industries to sort of contribute their little bucket of founders for this time period and bring them together so that we can fill that class reliably of 15 to 20 companies. It also allows us to mix people across stages. So I take everyone from you have an idea and a napkin all the way up to you're getting ready to raise a big seed round, right? But what unites all of them is this idea or the suspicion that they're wrestling with a big challenge facing the business right now, and they suspect or they know that some of those answers are or could be here in Las Vegas, right? Whether it's a partnership, a customer, an advisor, whatever it is. And I'm really proud of the mix that we've curated. The second thing is that when we look at where these people are coming from, we always want to build a program that's as globally connected as the city is itself, right? So of the 100 founders that have come up come through our doors, about 40% of them are from Nevada when they find us, mostly Southern Nevada. 40% are continental US, non-Nevada. And then that last 20% is international, primarily Canada and Latin America. I think this program next week is going to be the first one in a year where I haven't had a team from Chile, of all places. But this stage diversity and this geographic diversity actually gives a lot of really interesting perspectives to the founders that participate in our programs that they can take back to wherever they're from and sort of allow them to look at their own project in a different way. We also have partnerships with UC Business France and La Piscine, as well as MT Lab up here. Because we are local to Las Vegas, we've been working on establishing ecosystem partnerships with folks around the world so that they're sending founders, they're sending subject matter experts, they're sending like flows of resources and relationships to Las Vegas to support our founders. And then vice versa, when people finish our program, sometimes the answer isn't you're ready to go to Caesars Entertainment or you're ready to go to Harry Reid International. Sometimes the answer is, hey, you actually need to go to Casino du Montreal in Quebec, or you need to go to the Air Canada accelerator that MT Lab runs up there, right? And then you can loop back to Las Vegas when you're ready. So a couple quick case studies. Marwin was in our 4th program. He's a UNLV Management of Information Sciences master's student. He's also a software reliability engineer for a large healthcare company out of the Midwest. And he caught the AI bug like most people, right? And so he started kicking it around and was trying to figure out, okay, how could I deploy the models that I use at home in this, very highly locked down environment of my employer? And what he landed on was sort of a platform and a workflow automation platform that allows you to design AI workflows with little to no code, deploy them in a way that respects all your existing governance, controls, network access, like blah, 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 and basically run your own models on your own data with your own governance for your own use cases. He had a napkin when he showed up in January, and he just had 200K hit the bank last week and another 1.5 on the way, right? He's going to market with 3 companies that are here in town locally, right? And this is what the Launchpad is designed to facilitate and make that connection happen. Another interesting one that sort of shows the cross connectivity is Kat. She was in Marwin's cohort as well. She's building a company called Trust Health. Trust Health is a hybrid remote wound care recovery system. It's got a little bit of hardware, which are some sensors, as well as software that allows you to recover from like an abdominal surgery at home instead of in the hospital, where you're taking up a really expensive bed, you're much more likely to get infections, you're stressed out. And what Kat came to us, she's been working on this project for a while, and she was a little kind of like nervous, like, okay, I'm the only medical company here, like what am I gonna figure out? Like what could this program do for me? And around 11 o'clock on the first day, I went just to check in on her, and she said, one of the issues that we have in medicine with any intervention is compliance, right? People still have to do something on some sort of schedule. How do we get them to engage in that behavior so that they can get the benefit of whatever the medical intervention is? She goes, I've been talking to some of the gaming people, and it turns out that you guys actually really know a lot about getting people to do things on a specific cadence, right, repeatedly. And so she started she actually spun up like a research project based on how can they bring gamification into her wound care startup, right? What do we do besides the workshops for our founders? Well, it's not like a, hi, hello, thanks for locking yourself in a room with me for 3 days. I'll see you when I see you. We do a lot of ongoing collaboration support. We provide co-working nights. We help make sure that they get plugged into organizations like Startup Vegas, some of the Startup NV stuff that's going on. We also make sure that they have webinars, discounts, access to sort of all those things that founders need after the 3 days is over, so that they can build on the momentum that they create during the 3 days of the Launchpad. We've had 4 cohorts from January to January, 67 companies and 100 founders. We've also had 75 subject matter experts join us from all over the world. These are mostly people who have at least 5 years, more often 15 to 20 years of experience in either a function or a industry. This is Rebecca Martin. She was in cohort 3 under one company, left that company after she finished the cohort, came back as a mentor for cohort 4, and is now creating a really, really cool battle pass mechanic for online gaming and sports betting operators. She's a former Riot Games designer who lives in Utah, so she was working on like League of Legends and stuff like that, and we sort of created a bridge for her to come into the gaming ecosystem. So what's next? Like I was talking earlier, right? We're trying to run these programs as frequently as you can. The 5th cohort starts next weekend, July 6th through 8th. It's going to have a little bit more of a sports focus. We partner with UNLV's CCON, Sports Entertainment Innovation Conference, to put on this program specifically. Final day presentations will be at the Bellagio, which is going to be super fun. And the first 2 days will be at Blackfire, like normal. I still have a couple spots for sports-specific companies, even though we've gotten 100+ applications for this one. So if you or any of your friends are working on something in sports that is really cool, feel free to send them my way. What we're looking for, I covered most of this already. Early stage founders, founders who need to build their idea here, ideally companies that can work across several of our verticals, even if they're going to go to market in one specifically, and then people that actually need help. I'm not going to waste a founder's time. If you got it all figured out, you just need $1 million, I don't have a program for you yet. But we can help connect you to the people that will be useful there. Questions, comments, concerns? Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
I had the pleasure of living in the casinos during COVID because nobody else was, and they just needed to pay for the lighting bill. But I was pitching entertainment out here. Mark Wahlberg kind of tried to bring entertainment from Hollywood out here. I was pitching healthcare out here. In my opinion, cost of living is cheaper. I live in LA. I think it's more fun here. I know that paying $5,000 a month in rent's not cool. Not living the American dream's not cool because you can't buy real estate, right? In Los Angeles and San Francisco. So I would just assume that this would be a right ground for investing and diversification, but you're saying that's just following your chart, like the money still goes to New York City and San Francisco. I don't understand that.
When we were kicking around the idea of what Zero Labs was going to be, especially when we talked to folks about raising a venture fund, to synthesize a lot of the feedback we got was essentially, Vegas is a great place to go celebrate selling a company. It's not a great place to go build one. And so one of the questions that we were trying to answer for the first year of the Launchpad program was, okay, you don't think that you can find interesting people to build cool stuff in Vegas? Well, we'll show you, right? If you don't have to believe us, we'll show you. And so I think there's a lot of substance behind that sort of lack, right? But I think a lot of it is also the storytelling, the visibility of the work that is actually taking place here, and helping people quickly understand why, if they're going to see 1,000 deals, most of them are from San Francisco, New York, or LA, why they shouldn't immediately just throw the one from Las Vegas out the door, right? I know we talk about cost of living a lot, and that is a nice benefit of being here, but I also think it's very secondary for founders' preferences, right? When you look at their revealed preferences, they are willing to spend $7,000 a month to live in a broom closet in San Francisco because that's where they need to be. So the cheap rent is nice, but it's not what's going to make or break your business. And at the end of the day, you're trying to build something incredible. So how can we make sure that you have the infrastructure you need to build something incredible?
Yeah, currently you guys are here in Southern Nevada.
Yeah.
Is there a push to go up to Northern Nevada potentially?
No, as much as I love my partners at EDON. I know Startup NB kind of hits both cities. We are, one of the trade-offs that we've committed to, because we think it's in alignment with our thesis, is that we are only going to be here in Las Vegas for the very foreseeable future. Something massive would have to change. And that does have trade-offs. Like, it does limit my ability to recruit from certain places. It slows our growth in others. But on the flip side, it allows me to tell a much simpler story, right? Where I choose to embrace complexity is when I talk about our industry focus, when I talk about our stage, but I can sort of unify all that with the idea like, hey, this is in Vegas, for Vegas very specifically, and then we can have that conversation there. I don't want to be defending, oh, why do you have an outpost in Reno, and why do you have one in Montreal, and blah, 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 blah. It just doesn't make sense for what we're trying to do.
I was to say, with your partners in government,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen more progress with kind of changing the narrative of Vegas from what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, when it should be what happens in Vegas is startups?
Could you elaborate slightly on like
Well,
the
just
perception?
changing the narrative of what Vegas is. Like if you have a bunch of startups and founders, a
Gotcha.
VC is going to invest in healthcare in Boston and so on, and kind of not look or overlook what's in Vegas.
Yeah, so I think, so if I could broaden my answer just beyond even the government policy folks, I think we are starting to make some progress. You know, the idea that like what happens in Vegas scales globally is slowly taking root. I also think that both our corporate partners and our policymakers are starting to realize that Vegas, even when I was at Caesars and MGM, it often felt like people treated the ecosystem like as just fully baked, like it's sprung, fully formed, right? And so Vegas is just where these current collection of things happens. And people felt very little agency over being able to shape that environment, right? And shape the ecosystem to grow into whatever direction they want it to grow into. So now I think policymakers and our corporate partners are realizing like, oh, we actually do have a say. We can actually sit down at a table and do the work and kind of nudge this cruise ship in the direction that we want it to go. On the investor side, it's starting to come. I think you see Startup NV has been very successful with their funds. They just raised a new one. If anyone's met Len Jessup, former UNLV president, he's got Desert Forge Ventures. I think they're racing towards a $20 million fund here in a little bit. So I think there's going to be a tipping point where, you know, we already have managing directors from A16Z and 500 Co. and every big and small VC you can imagine living here because it's so convenient for them. Eventually they're going to wake up and realize that, well, they can actually work here too, right? And so it's frustrating and incremental sometimes, but we are making progress.
I'm curious if Zero Labs has kind of taken note or trying to change sort of the culture of sort of startup thinking here. Some context. I moved from San Francisco in 2021 after selling my previous fintech company and spent about 4 years in venture capital and angel investing a bunch. And you know, I was asked to be an LP in some of these funds, and you know, one of the things was just sort of be afloat as part of the problem, and then the other one was just sort of culture. Like, so I recently started a new company, and one of the challenges that I've been facing here locally, and it's sort of a needs to be in Vegas sort of company, is how transactional things are in Vegas versus like sort of the culture in the Bay Area, which is like very you know, like very open to sort of help and to give and to you know, sort of build social capital that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't have the best answer for you, but other than to say that we are, one of the reasons why we're very intentional about the way that we curate our community, we curate our cohorts, et cetera, is that we set a very clear expectation that people are going to continue to collaborate and offer each other assistance after the program ends, right? That includes the subject matter experts, that includes the founders, et cetera, et cetera. We see that happening inside our alumni. We see a lot of those cross-team collaborations that don't come with like a consulting agreement, right? We see a lot of people, VPs of product at major companies chipping in for a few weeks. Maybe that turns into a formal advisor relationship. Often it doesn't. They just help out for a minute and then they go back to work. But it's hard. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, and we try to avoid making it, is to think that like we can just mandate that. If you try to grab it, it'll just disappear. So the way we sort of think about it is it's probably closer to gardening than it is anything else. And so we try to create programs, we try to create a calendar of events, we try to curate a group of people that have a higher probability of creating that sort of culture and fostering that sort of culture, and then we try to lead by inspiring it ourselves where we can, right? So we can talk about economics for a second. Accelerators make money functionally one of 4 ways. They either take equity, they charge the companies to participate, they write a check and then they're taking equity. They get a corporate sponsorship, or we'll do the 5th one, they'll get like a government grant. Today, for the last year, right, because we've been running this as a pilot, like we've self-funded almost all of this with some support from the state and the university, right? So that's 67 companies, many of which I very deeply believe in, that I spend hours with every week, that I have no economic interest in whatsoever, right? But what I do ask from them is to say, hey, I need you to go be successful, and I need you to help us grow this community. That's why 60% of the subject matter experts we have for next weekend, currently confirmed, are actually alumni from previous cohorts. Last thing I'll say is, and I don't know how true this is because I never lived in the Bay, I've had a lot of folks who did come from the Bay, who are in our network, who come to our events, and they do describe it as feeling slightly closer to home, or what they're used to. So I had to take their word for it. Hopefully that means we're doing something right.
I want to go back to your very first slide. You asked
Sure.
a question about that discrepancy
Yeah.
between the revenue that Vegas generates and 55 billion or something. Yeah, and then what Las Vegas attracts. So I think the challenge is you're trying to compete with a behemoth, a branded behemoth that Vegas is,
Mm-hmm.
the entertainment capital, and Bo is now trying to brand it as the fun economy, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been in Vegas for 30 years, and what I've seen in the attempt to grow the startup industry, you've got Tony Hsieh who started sort of downtown.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all these little silos of independent entities trying to create a community.
Mm-hmm.
If you consolidate, I know it's romantic, but if you consolidated that and created a district rather than trying to compete with this behemoth, I think that might be a unique approach.
Funny you mentioned that. So Clark County has actually been working on an innovation district and corridor for a while now. You can look up some of the plans online. If you search Clark County Innovation District. It's going to run basically from Blackfire, hop over the freeway to the Uncommons, and then run basically 2 miles on either side of the 215 down to Switch. That is, so like the Harry Research Park is 100 acres where Blackfire is, across from IKEA. And so that innovation district is supposed to encompass, I think it's probably 10% the size of Manhattan. I think I tried to look that up really late one night. And what they're trying to figure out now is, okay, when you look at like the Research Triangle in North Carolina, when you look at something Square in Boston, which is another kind of famous area that's dense with incubators, accelerators, founders, VCs. What would that need to look like here in Las Vegas, right? And a lot of people are collaborating to bring that to life.
Okay.
But I agree with you, yeah. And I would say, like, to your, like, we've had, Tony put almost $500 million into the downtown project, right? I think where that effort might have struggled was sometimes if the money is too available, it can postpone you having to learn the things that you need to learn. So like, what was the thesis of the downtown project? What companies were supposed to flourish here even when the money was taken away? Like, what's one of, and this is part rationalization, part requirements, but one of the things that has surprised me about our model that's been really useful is the fact that I'm telling every single one of the 500 people that we've interviewed for this program that there's no money with it, coming with it. And they're still flying here from all over the world to spend 3 days in Vegas. That's a very useful signal about, okay, what types of companies and what types of founders think that they need to be here and what can we do to make them successful.
etc. If I'm 18 years old and someone comes to me and saying there's this wonderful occupation where you can make extra money,
Yeah.
it's really hard to get into, it's for the brightest, etc. That might dangle something. Someone might become a doctor, become a PC. I think financial literacy is low across the world.
Yeah.
Here we're kind of very low. I used to be a financial advisor, so that used to be part of my job is to educate people. Are there any thoughts on that from Clark County to tackle it from that side?
Absolutely. So, I think in more mature ecosystems, I think I was saying this to you, where like the lanes and the roles are more established and specialized. Like if I'm in San Francisco, I can just be an investor. I don't really have to think about anything else. Everything is mostly set up, right? I'll find a calendar of events. The accelerators know how to accelerate. The founders understand how to be founders. And if they don't, like there's people in their in-group of stakeholders who can help them navigate that. I think one of the things that increasingly I'm seeing across the Vegas ecosystem is we're all willing to spend time doing stuff that's not technically our jobs, right? So like I spend a lot of time with the workforce development people from GoEd. I'm going to a UNLV event on Friday, even though I definitely don't have time to do that. That's like a high school pitch competition, right? Because I don't take the maximalist position that like every single person graduating from UNLV should be an entrepreneur, that every single person that graduates from a high school in Clark County School District should be an entrepreneur. But we want to raise the awareness that this is an opportunity, and if it's a path that's interesting for you, you have resources and relationships to help you explore that. And if you want to go down it, go down it. I know it's very top of mind. I know they've even thought about like an entrepreneurship-focused magnet school, but still sort of early days there.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of education, I actually work for UNR Extension's Small Business Education Program, where we give free business education here in Vegas, Southern Nevada, for startups and small businesses. So we focus on like 5 topic pillars: so finance, management, marketing, startups. And so we have content that we're basically hosting in person at our offices, 30 plus classes that we host each month, both in person as well as over Zoom. So we're also trying to like plug into some of these resources as well, like Startup Vegas and also Zero Labs and various other organizations. But our program is fairly new in terms of the English side. We've been focusing on our Spanish side, which we've capitalized that whole market in North Las Vegas, luckily. So just to kind of put that on your radar.
Yeah, I know JA does like a pitch day, stuff like that. And so a lot of the work is just connecting these different things to your point, right? There's a lot of work that's being done. How can I maybe change 5% of my program so that it's really easy for someone to jump from what we do with them to something else? And how can they adjust their program 5% so that it's very easy to receive someone? And people have been really open to that conversation.
Just go back to the map. I mean, in terms of the venture capital, because I've spent most of my career in emerging healthcare, which I was forced to go from small labs in San Diego down up to San Francisco, where all the money was.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had to have a home base in Los Angeles. That's where the money is, especially when I'm dealing with doctors. That seems to be where the money is, Orange County, coast of Los Angeles. Being in those 2 markets for almost 20 years, I'm about to sign a lease in Las Vegas, and I love this place.
Mm-hmm.
I think the quality of life here is so much better. Why is there not more of a push from just like a convention and tourism? Like you don't see those commercials out there, really. I mean,
Yeah.
Why isn't that a Super Bowl commercial? And it's like, come to Las Vegas and start your business.
That's a good question.
But I think the answer to that goes back to my point is that Vegas is such a massive behemoth. How do you compete with the entertainment capital of the world? You can't compete financially with that, so you've got to kind of build small. You start with a district that's known. Where you go in Vegas if you want to get into tech? Well, you go there and there.
Right.
You go to the financial district in New York. You go to Hollywood in LA. You go to Soho or whatever in New York. We don't have that here, so there's no place to start growth, and you're competing with this. You can't compete with the Super Bowl commercial. I mean, it's a great idea.
Well, when you launch a company here, do they typically go to New York or Los Angeles after where they get big? Does that make sense? Like they start here and then they bounce out?
Well, do you find, because I've seen so that they can look like they're in those areas but don't actually reside there.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I agree. You bring the horse to the trough, year round. And so there are ones that that specialize in certain things. You want to be for a lot of reasons. Because in some place like San Francisco, you have a density of your partners, your investors, your customers, or whoever they want to be. And if you've got a business relying on you're an early stage startup, relying on selling and partnering and growing as possible, you want as many of those tools in front of you as possible. So for instance, I was looking at in San Diego once, they're like, oh, you just invested in one of our competitors. Well, in the Bay Area, why don't you invest in us? We're growing up to the right. It's like a straight line. I was like, well, I'm really sorry, that company is growing exponentially. You can't catch it for a lot of reasons. Well, I'm going to the Bay Area, next month. I've got 20 meetings lined up. I was like, well, that's awesome. You should be there all the time. Because your competitors are having 20 meetings a day in their building, on their floor, and then they go
Doing
to the next
cocktails
one.
afterwards, dinners afterwards.
Exactly. So it's it becomes really difficult to keep up if you don't have a lot of those resources and those things.
No.
And it has nothing to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
There's a talk, a research that I read that the company of the future is going to be a lot different than the company now. So one of the VCs are looking at a company that has 1 to 3 people, most, and has $1 billion of revenue. Really, really, right? So if you think of that model, which is maybe 5 years out or 10 years out, based upon AI or data center, just purely tech, or even medicine that's run really lean, then we can get there by creating that here. Right? We have all this space in between, and we're saying you need energy, we'll give you cheap energy. Right? We have hydro, et cetera. You need, you don't need that same type of infrastructure if you're running a different type of company, which is what I think we're driving towards. Now that may, sometimes the business models come out and then they falter, people decide to take their things, whatever. But I grew up in New York, I totally agree with what you said, but coming here, I've seen in the 9 years I've been here, the growth we've done, the changes, just the amount of people and how the projections get to, saying we're still a very young city. I think that's what people also forget. Between San Francisco and New York, they have hundreds of years of boom and bust and problems. We can skip all that like an emerging market and get skip basically long lines and go right to Wi-Fi. Skip right to 5G that goes like a satellite. If there is a coordinated method at the top that trickles down.
True, and I totally agree. I think the one thing that's missing from that is knowing what sort of performing on that level is like. And so when folks here asking come to us and tell people why they should build what they give and we gotta keep talent here. My first response is send them away. Send them to
Let them cook for a little bit.
to embed themselves in those countries, in those companies, so they can see what their peers are doing and network and build and know what it means to win, so that then maybe they can come back and build it here or wherever.
Maybe experience.
You have to get
Maybe
that
that's why I
experience.
like it so much better here, because that's where I learned. But the thought of living in New York City is
I mean,
but I have to do it to make money.
At the end of the day, certainly for your company, because at the end of the day, as an investor, or particularly, as an angel is different than being on the venture side. Because on the venture side, I have one job, return capital, as much of it as possible. And so, I have to put it in place that has the best chance of doing it.
Yeah.
So independent of deal flow. So.
That's where I think what I'm really happy to hear in this conversation that wasn't necessarily true a few years ago even, is sort of a lot of detail and realism about this is where we are, this is what we have, how can we build on this to get where we want to be? If you go back to the downtown projects, wouldn't it be great if we had an early stage startup ecosystem, right? Well, now we can actually see the shape of what one could look like. Maybe not in every single vertical, but those things can be solved, right? It's not just saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had a biotech industry here? Well, it's like, okay, well, let's look at brain health, let's look at aging, let's look at very specific assets that we have in place so that we can get to that density and start to build those communities that are ultimately the engines of this growth. It's not any program that I run or anything. Like, the most productive conversations some of our founders are having are with people that they met indirectly through being in our program, right? I need to make sure those second and third degree connections happen. I'm probably the least important person in the transaction at the end of the day. Any other questions?
Quick question. I just wanted to make sure I understood the Spencer Labs in terms of industry agnostics.
Mhm.
Are you guys basically any type of industry? Just because I know agriculture and food businesses is like becoming huge here in Nevada as
Yes.
well. And so I was just kind of wondering in terms of that food system supply chain.
Yep.
Are you guys also supporting businesses in that scene?
We would love to. So there's a few buckets where we haven't had a ton of like founders go through the program, and then it's like advanced manufacturing, certainly things in like logistics, warehouse operations. Agriculture is going to be a big one. Just give me some more time. We're working on it.
I'd love
Yeah.
to connect with you.
Yeah, please.
Running a new initiative here in State Nevada.
Okay.
Food Business Center. So I'd love to connect and see how.
Is this the one that's is there an EDA component to this? That's a connection with Berkeley or somewhere in California?
Say that one more
Is this the program that has a relationship to California some way?
Yeah, so we're part of the South, so it's the Southwest Regional Food Business Center.
Yeah.
So California's the head of it.
Yeah.
But it's California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah.
Yep.
It's a whole USDA-led initiative, but UNR Extension, where I work at, is the one that's hosting that program.
So to that point, right, there's something called now it's called the NSF Futures Engine. It was formerly the Southwest Sustainability Innovation Engine.
Is that the one in Arizona?
So Arizona, Nevada, Utah as well. UNLV is the local partner here. Again, like, we support that program because it's important for the overall ecosystem, and we're trying to figure out how it connects back. So would it be happy to talk about agriculture and anything else? One more, and then I gotta go finish making my materials for next week.
So have either Zero Labs or Startup Vegas done any collaboration with Tech Alley? Or crossover?
Yes, I mean, it's not super formal. I mean, it's for better or for worse, I really only have one way to work with people today, or two ways. Either I get up from my desk and I go somewhere, or someone comes to the Launchpad program. No time in my life for anything but that. And so I think where Startup Vegas and Tech Alley and us, and even Startup NV and us have worked in the past, is sort of, hey, let's talk about our programming. Let's make sure that the relevant people on each side of the thing know what's going on so that we can facilitate those lightweight connections. We've never co-hosted, I've never brought in someone to co-operate a Launchpad with us.
The reason I brought it up is that in terms of building community, I was just at an event on Saturday, and there were 60 or so people there. So the Tech Alley event.
Yeah, no, I love Josh, great guy.
Definitely some synergy there.
Yeah, and when we send a lot of our folks there. A lot of our applications do come from there. I live in the Southwest, so I don't get down there as much as I would like to. But yeah, there's always opportunities to do more. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.